guys, it's Gretchen and welcome back to my channel. So one of the most commonly asked questions to me, to probably anyone in the piercing community is, I have a piercing bump, what do I do? So I'm here to tell you today kind of how to understand piercing bumps because they're more common than you would think. So at least know that if you have a piercing bump, you are most likely not alone. So you have a dreaded piercing bump. Now what? The first thing you need to do once you notice a piercing bump forming is to kind of determine what type of piercing bump you have. There are three common ones. Everyone automatically believes they have a keloid. That's most likely not the case. So I'm here to tell you the three different kinds, how to kind of differentiate between the three so that you can basically figure out which one do I actually have. So the first one I'm going to touch on is a keloid because that seems to be what everyone believes they have. Keloids are basically an overgrowth of scar tissue. When you get a piercing, scar tissue is going to form. You've caused a little bit of trauma to an area. That's just what your body's natural reaction is to form a little bit of scar tissue. A keloid is basically an overgrowth of scar tissue. It becomes this really thick scar around your piercing site in the form of a bump. Keloids typically don't show up until months after you've gotten a piercing. So this is not usually something that'll come up immediately or even within the first month. This is something that could be like 6 months down the road after you've had this piercing. Not always the case, but usually. Keloids also can get bigger. They can start off as this little tiny bump and then they grow because that scar tissue is just building up on top of itself, and keloids can get pretty big. The next kind of piercing bump is a granuloma. I hope I said that correctly. This is basically a type of lesion, whereas a keloid is an overgrowth of scar tissue. A granuloma is an overgrowth of blood vessels. Keep in mind, I am not in the medical field. I was an English major, so I don't really know how things work, but this is just what I've learned. So whereas a keloid is scar tissue, a granuloma is a bunch of blood vessels. Just kind of. And then the third type is a pustule, which sounds basically what it is. It's a pimple with pus in it. It's disgusting. So just think of your days of high school when your face was breaking out and you're like, I hate everything. That, but on your piercing. So now that we know the three major types of piercing bumps that can form, what should you do with them if you find yourself with one? First of all, can you pop a piercing bump? You shouldn't, especially with a granuloma or a keloid, because there's nothing in those bumps for you to actually like excise. There's nothing like if you popped it, nothing's really gonna come out. A pustule, because it is kind of like a pimple, you could. Should you? No. Much like you shouldn't pop pimples in general, though who of us actually follows that rule? Because popping pimples can lead to a greater infection. Have you ever noticed when you pop a pimple, you're like, that's gonna take care of it, and it looks 10 times worse? Pretty much the same concept. So as much as you may want to pop these piercing bumps or do everything in your power to make them pop, don't. I know I did with my doth piercing when I had that whole bump thing, but do as I say, not as I do, because that was just me being desperate and uneducated. So what causes piercing bumps? There are a multitude of reasons why a piercing bump may form, such as poor aftercare, jewelry reactions, genetics, luck of the draw, maybe it was pierced incorrectly. There are so many things that can cause a piercing bump. A lot of times keloids are a genetic thing. Jewelry allergies. Whenever I get a piercing bump, it's typically because of a jewelry not situating itself well with my body. Also tends to come because I roll over in my sleep a lot, despite my best efforts. And sometimes luck of the draw is a major reason why you may develop a piercing bump. You may do everything correctly and you still may get a piercing bump. It's just the unluck of the draw. So the question I get asked more often than anything else, I have a piercing bump, how do I get rid of it? So I'm here to tell you how to get rid of it. When it comes to aftercare of a piercing, you should be cleaning it just like your piercer told you. If you find yourself with a piercing bump, there are a few extra things that you can do. Either make sure that it doesn't get any bigger, make sure it doesn't spread, to make sure that it doesn't get worse, and to eventually hope it goes away. So the first thing you should be doing is cleaning the site 2 to 3 times a day. Do not do it any more than that because you can cause irritation and irritation can make it worse. Even if your piercing appears healed, and I promise you, it is not healed after a month. I cannot tell you how many comments I have gotten on videos before saying like, I got my piercing 3 weeks ago and it seems healed, can I change it? It's not healed. I promise you. I guarantee you it is not healed after a month. So no, even if it appears healed, continue with your aftercare. continue cleaning it. And for the love of everything in this world, do not change it. So what you should do is keep cleaning for a minimum of 3 months. Keep up with that aftercare routine that your piercer gave you for a minimum of 3 months, but I always recommend a minimum of 6 months because a piercing, especially cartilage, can take a year to heal. I guarantee I'm gonna get a comment on this video saying like, I got my piercing 2 weeks ago, which if you're getting a piercing 2 weeks ago, we've been in quarantine longer than that, so did you do it in your kitchen? So what are some methods of aftercare? First one is antimicrobial soap. Sometimes this can be too harsh in the very beginning of a new piercing. I don't recommend it. A lot of piercers don't, but some piercers do. I don't recommend it for the first month. Unless you start noticing some issues, then I recommend it. So finding a good antimicrobial soap. I have 2 that I always go towards. One is the Provon Antimicrobial Lotion Soap, and then the other one was recommended to me by my piercer, which is the Derma Cleanse, exclusively organic antimicrobial body piercing cleanser. I've started preferring this one a little bit more. It just feels gentler on my skin, but I do have both as an option. You just basically get a Q-tip, you wet it, you put a little bit on the end, you rub it around the site. You make sure that you rinse the area after you've used this because leaving soap behind can irritate it more and make it worse. We don't need that. You can also use pre-made saline solutions. My personal favorites, Neomed and H2 Ocean. I tend to like Neomed a little bit more these days because of the nozzle. You can have it all sorts of directions and it will spray. This one is just as fine too. I do feel like this one might be a little bit harsher sometimes, so this is my go-to, but I do have both. So if you want a pre-made saline solution, these 2 are good. If you would rather make your own solution, please do it correctly. The first thing you need to make sure that you have is non-iodized sea salt, much like this. It says sea salt. This salt does not supply iodine, non-iodized, this kind. You will take this. You will take 1/8 of a teaspoon to 1/4 of a teaspoon. Do not use any more than 1/4. Just because you use more does not mean it'll heal faster or clean faster. In fact, it'll irritate it, and once again, repeat it with me, can prolong the process. So you will take no more than 1/4 of a teaspoon of non-iodized sea salt. You will put it into 1 cup of hot water, as hot as you can stand. Not so much that you're gonna scorch your skin off, but as warm as you can stand. Not room temperature, not tepid. It needs to be hot as you can stand, but don't burn your skin off. You need to have a cup of that, which is equal to 8 ounces. You put your 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt in there, you mix it up, then you have 2 options of how to apply it. You can take whatever container that you've mixed that solution in and dunk the piercing site directly into it and hold it for 2 to 3 minutes, or 5. Maximum of 5. You don't want to do any more than that, especially since it's a direct contact. The other option you can do, which is my personal favorite, is to take your cup of solution, take a cotton round, dunk it in there, soak it in there, and then just kind of put it on the piercing site. So say your tragus is having issues. Take this, you dunk it in the water, wring out any excess so that it's not like dripping down your face. And what I always do is I fold it up like this and then I put some on the inside, a little bit on the outside, so then it just kind of sits there and just sits on the site. I have been known to leave it on for 20 minutes before. That is poor practice because it's irritating the heck out of it. 5 minutes, that's all you need. 5 minutes. Again, using more salt does not mean it's gonna heal quicker or clean faster, anything like that. If anything, it's gonna irritate it more and prolong the process of healing. For goodness sakes, please do not use hydrogen peroxide on the site. Just don't. I don't care if you've used it before and it's been fine. You got lucky. Don't use hydrogen peroxide. I don't care if you used it, your sister used it, your friend used it. You got lucky if it worked. Don't use it. There is a paste that a lot of people swear by. It's an aspirin paste. You take crushed up aspirin, you mix it with a little bit of salt, you mix it with a little bit of water, and it creates this paste, and you put it on the site. Some people leave it overnight. At first, I thought that sounded like a great idea, but then I started doing a little bit more research about aspirin, and it's actually not that good, and if it's worked for you before, that's awesome, but it's also damaging your skin. Aspirin has an ingredient in it called salicylic acid. And you know what acid does? It burns. Salicylic acid plastered onto your skin is not good. Essentially what it's doing is it's burning away the bump. So yes, it may clear up pretty fast, but you are damaging so much of your skin, you may have more complications in the future. So some people swear by the aspirin paste. I personally would not recommend it. I have not tried it myself, mostly because I just don't keep aspirin around, but it's pretty harsh for your skin. A lot of people also swear by tea tree oil. I personally am one of those people who does. However, tea tree oil is incredibly harsh as well. A lot of these ingredients that are used in the healing process can be harsh if not used appropriately. So with tea tree oil, what you need to do is to dilute it. What you can do with that is you can have a Q-tip, you get some tea tree oil on the end of it, you dunk it in water or even in a salt solution, and then that way it dilutes it so that it's not as potent, not as strong, and not as harsh. So yes, tea tree oil does work. Also works on pimples, which is why I would probably work on like a pustule, but you have to make sure that it's diluted and it's not straight from the source. You should also only do tea tree oil 1 to 2 times a day. I personally recommend just once a day because it can be so harsh, and then keep up with your cleaning 2 to 3 times a day. Some of the best advice for piercing bumps is to leave it be. Continue with your aftercare routine. Yes, it's unsightly, it's horrible, it feels icky, you don't like the look of it, I totally get it. But the more you mess with it, the more irritated it's gonna be. And I know I've repeated this so many times, please don't take a shot every time I do it because you'll be drunk by the end of this video. But the more you mess with the piercing bump, the more irritated it's gonna be and the longer it's gonna take to heal. So you can do some of these steps. I would not do all of them. Talk about an irritant. But I would pick and choose which ones you prefer, which ones fit your lifestyle better, which ones you think would best suit you. But at the end of the day, just don't touch it. Don't mess with it. Do your cleaning routine and that's it. No one wants a trip to the doctor's office to deal with a piercing bump. So continue with your aftercare and be patient. A lot of patience is required for healing a piercing or for getting a piercing back on track. I'm currently dealing with a tiny little bump behind this tragus piercing, and believe me, I get it. I get it so much that it's just like, oh my God, you were fine. Like, I don't understand why do you keep doing this? But then I remember, this piercing isn't that old. I just got it in January. It's gonna do that. It's gonna have a moment where it's like,
I'm gonna be a little today.
So I get it. I get not wanting to see that or feel it. I mean, yes, it's very sore right now, and that's what happens. But I'm gonna continue with my aftercare. I'm gonna continue with these cleaning methods, and I'm gonna be patient. Like I mentioned before, cartilage piercings can take up to a year to heal. Be patient. Piercing bumps will eventually go away. If you find that you're noticing that the bump is growing, you may have a keloid and you may want to seek medical help at that point. Also keep in mind, don't take your piercing out if you think there's an infection, because taking the piercing out can just invite that infection to get caught in there, especially if the site closes up. So just because you have a bump, don't take your jewelry out because you think it's infected. Leave it in and continue with your care. Let me know in the comments below your worst piercing bump mishap. I swear my death was my worst one. It was disgusting. If you've never seen that video, go watch it. Just don't do what I did. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big ol' thumbs up. Go on down there and hit that subscribe button, wherever it may be, because I don't know. Even though I do, this is just my shtick now. Also hit that notification bell in case you want to know when I upload, and in case YouTube wants to let you know when I upload, because I would really appreciate it. And until next time, bye guys.